The blood on my hands was still wet when I stumbled into the tattoo parlor, and the man behind the counter looked up from his work with eyes that had seen worse things than a woman fleeing for her life. I had not meant to run this far into the human settlement. My clan would kill me if they knew I had crossed the border, but the alternative was worse. The raiders who had slaughtered my family would not stop hunting me until I was dead too. My breathing came in ragged gasps, my tunic torn and stained with mud and blood that belonged to my younger brother. I had tried to save him. I had failed. The human man set down his needle carefully, his dark eyes moving from my face to the cuts on my arms, the way I held my side where a blade had nearly found its mark. He was perhaps 30 years old, with black hair pulled back from his face and intricate designs covering both his forearms in deep blues and blacks. His build was lean but strong, the kind of strength that came from years of precise, controlled work. "You need to leave," I managed to say, my voice rougher than I intended. "They are coming." "Who is coming?" His voice was calm, measured. He stood slowly as if sudden movements might startle me like a wounded animal. "Raiders, humans." I swallowed hard, tasting copper. "They killed my family." "They will kill you too if they find me here." He moved to the window, peering through the heavy curtains into the darkening street beyond. "How many?" "6, maybe 7. My legs were shaking. I had been running for 2 days with barely any rest, eating nothing but the few berries I had managed to grab from bushes along the way. "I should not have come here. I am sorry." The man turned back to me and something in his expression shifted. Not fear exactly, but calculation. "There is a room in the back. Go there now. Do not make a sound. They will search. They will not find you." He crossed the space between us in 3 long strides and gripped my shoulders with surprising strength. "I am Finn Ingram. This is my shop and I am telling you to hide. Now." I did not understand why this human would help me. My kind had raided human settlements for generations. The prejudice went both ways. My clan had taught me that humans were weak, treacherous, not to be trusted. Yet here was one offering me sanctuary when he had every reason to turn me away, or simply let the raiders have me. The back room was small and cluttered with supplies, bottles of ink in every color imaginable, stacks of parchment covered in intricate designs, needles soaking in clear liquid. I crouched behind a large cabinet, making myself as small as possible, and listened to my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Footsteps outside. Rough voices calling to each other. The door to the shop burst open with enough force that I heard the hinges groan. "We are looking for an orc girl," a harsh voice demanded. "Green skin, tusks about this tall. She came this way." "I have been working all afternoon." Finn's voice remained steady, bored even. "Have not seen anyone matching that description. You would not hide one of those monsters, would you?" Another voice, younger, eager for violence. "That would make you a traitor to your own kind. I am a tattoo artist, not a border guard. If you want to search my shop, you will need authorization from the magistrate. Otherwise, you are trespassing." The silence that followed stretched so long, I thought I might suffocate from holding my breath. Then came the sound of heavy boots on wooden floors, moving through the front room. I pressed myself harder against the wall, willing my body to disappear entirely. The door to the back room opened. Light spilled across the floor, and I could see the shadow of a man's form in the doorway. He took one step inside, then another. My hand moved to the small knife at my belt. It would do little good against armed men, but I would not go down without a fight. "Nothing back here but ink and paper," the man called out. "Let us check the other shops." The door closed. The footsteps retreated. Several minutes passed before I heard the front door shut again, and even then I did not move until Finn appeared in the doorway. "They are gone," he said quietly. But they will be back. Raiders like that do not give up easily. I stood on shaking legs, my whole body suddenly aware of how exhausted I was. Why did you help me? He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Because you asked me to leave. You were more concerned about my safety than your own. He gestured back toward the front room. Come. You are bleeding and you need food. The front room of the tattoo parlor was warmer than the back, heated by a small stove in the corner. Finn guided me to a chair, the same one his customers must sit in for their tattoos, and began gathering supplies. Clean cloth, water, something that smelled sharp and medicinal. This will sting, he warned before pressing the cloth to the cut on my arm. He was right. I bit down on my lip to keep from crying out, tasting blood again. What is your name? He asked as he worked, his hands gentle despite the pain he was causing. Grukhara. I watched his face for any sign of recognition, but he showed none. It means fierce heart in my language. Your family chose well. He moved to the cut on my side, lifting my torn tunic carefully. This one is deeper. You were lucky. Lucky. The word felt wrong in my mouth. My brother was not lucky, my mother was not lucky. They are all dead because I was too slow, too weak to protect them. Finn paused in his work, meeting my eyes. You survived. That takes strength, not weakness. My clan will say I am a coward for running. Your clan is not here. He resumed cleaning the wound, his touch steady and sure. And frankly, staying to die with them would have been the true act of cowardice. Living takes courage. I had never heard a human speak this way. In my clan stories, humans were brutal and simple, caring only for gold and conquest. This man, with his gentle hands and quiet wisdom, did not match those stories at all. He finished bandaging my wounds and stood, moving to a small shelf where he kept what looked like personal supplies. He returned with bread, cheese, and dried meat, simple food, but my stomach clenched with hunger at the sight of it. Eat slowly, he advised. Your body will reject it if you eat too fast after starving. I forced myself to take small bites, though everything in me wanted to devour it all at once. Finn watched me with an expression I could not quite read, not pity exactly, but something softer than mere concern. You cannot stay here, he said finally. If those raiders come back with authorization to search, I cannot hide you. The bread turned to ash in my mouth. I understand. I will leave at dawn. I did not say you had to leave the settlement. I said you cannot stay here in the shop. He leaned back against his workbench, arms crossed over his chest. There is an old homestead about 2 miles north of here. It belonged to my grandfather before he died. The house is small but sound, and there are woods nearby where you could hunt. You would be safe there. Why would you do this for me? The question burst out of me, too sharp, too desperate. You owe me nothing. You risk everything by helping me. Finn was quiet for a moment, his gaze moving to the window where darkness had fully settled over the street outside. 5 years ago, I was a soldier, he said finally. I fought in the border wars. I killed Orcs warriors, yes, but also people who were simply defending their homes, just like you tried to defend yours. He turned back to me, and I saw something haunted in his eyes. I cannot undo what I did, but I can choose differently now. The weight of his words settled over us like snow. Here was a man who had killed my people, offering me sanctuary. It should have filled me with rage, with the desire for vengeance. Instead, I felt only a strange, aching kinship. I accept your offer, I said quietly, and I thank you for it. He nodded once, sharp and decisive. Rest here tonight. I will close the shop and keep watch. At first light, I will take you to the homestead myself. Sleep came in fits and starts, haunted by dreams of fire and blood and my brother's final scream. Each time I jolted awake, I found Finn still sitting by the window, keeping vigil as he had promised. Once, Our eyes met across the dark room, and he offered me a small nod of reassurance before returning his attention to the street. Dawn broke cold and gray over the settlement. Finn packed supplies into a worn leather bag, more food, blankets, a small knife sharper than the one I carried. He moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this before, though I suspected he had never smuggled an orc woman to safety. We left through the back door, moving quickly through the narrow alleys between buildings. The settlement was just beginning to wake, smoke rising from chimneys as people started their morning fires. A few early risers gave us curious looks, but no one stopped us. Perhaps they assumed I was a customer, though I doubted many orcs came to human tattoo artists for their work. The homestead sat in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. The house was indeed small, just 2 rooms from what I could see, but the roof looked solid and the door hung straight on its hinges. A well stood nearby, and I could hear the sound of a stream somewhere beyond the trees. "There are traps in the woods," Finn explained as he unlocked the door. "My grandfather used them for rabbits and other small game. I can show you where they are, teach you how to set them properly." Inside, the house smelled of dust and disuse, but it was clean. A simple bed frame stood against one wall, a table and 2 chairs occupied the center of the main room, and a stone fireplace dominated the far wall. The second room was smaller, containing what looked like storage shelves and a few basic tools. "It is not much," Finn said, setting the bag down on the table, "but it is shelter, and it is far enough from the main settlement that no one will bother you here." It is more than I had any right to expect. I moved to the window, looking out at the forest beyond. "I can hunt. I can provide for myself. You have already done too much. There is one more thing." He reached into his coat and pulled out a rolled piece of parchment. "This is a deed to the property. My grandfather left it to me when he died, but I have no use for it. If anyone asks, you have permission to be here." I stared at the parchment, unable to comprehend what he was offering. "I cannot accept this. If your people discover you have given land to an orc, then let them discover it." There was steel in his voice now, the same steel I had heard when he faced down the raiders. "I am not afraid of my people's prejudices, Grukhara, and you need protection. Legal protection, not just a roof over your head." The deed felt heavy in my hands, weighted with meaning I was still struggling to understand. This human man who barely knew me was risking his reputation, possibly his safety, to ensure mine. It went against everything I had been taught about his kind. "I will repay you," I said firmly. "Somehow, someday, I will repay this debt." "There is no debt." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I will come by in a few days to check on you. If you need anything before then, the shop is always open during daylight hours. But be careful. Those raiders may still be looking." He was gone before I could formulate a response, his footsteps fading into the forest. I stood alone in the small homestead, surrounded by more kindness than I had ever received from my own clan, and allowed myself to weep for the first time since my family had died. The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. I learned the forest, marking the locations of Finn's grandfather's traps and setting a few of my own. Game was plentiful: rabbits, wild fowl, even a young deer that I managed to bring down with a carefully aimed throw of my knife. I repaired the house where I could, replacing loose boards and clearing away years of accumulated debris. Finn came by every 3 days, always bringing supplies I had not asked for. Fresh bread from the settlement's baker. A warm cloak when the nights grew colder. Books, which surprised me. He seemed to have an endless collection of stories and histories. "Can you read?" he had asked on that first visit, holding out a slim volume bound in green leather. "Some," I admitted. "My mother taught me the human script." She said it was important to understand our enemies. Then perhaps these will help pass the time. He set the book on the table between us. This one is about a knight who gives up his title to become a healer. I think you might like it. I did like it. More than that, I devoured it, reading late into the night by firelight. When Finn returned 3 days later, I had questions about the knight's choices, about the world the author had created, about whether humans truly believed in such noble sacrifices. Some do, Finn said. We were sitting at the small table, sharing a meal I had prepared from the deer I had caught. Others believe only in power and wealth. We are not so different from orcs in that regard, I think. My clan would never admit such a thing. I tore off a piece of bread, considering my next words carefully. They taught us that humans were all alike, greedy, cruel, incapable of honor. What do you believe now? It was a dangerous question, one that required me to confront the ways my understanding had shifted since fleeing to this place. I believe that individuals matter more than the stories we tell about entire peoples. You have shown me more honor than my own clan ever did. Something flickered across Finn's face, pleasure, perhaps, or vindication. Your clan cast you out, not officially. But I know what they would say if they learned I had accepted help from a human, that I had let myself be saved instead of dying with my family. The bitterness in my voice surprised me. In their eyes, I am already dead, a ghost, not worth acknowledging. Then they are fools. Finn's voice was fierce, and when I looked up, his dark eyes were blazing with an intensity I had not seen before. You are stronger than any of them. You survived impossible odds. You learned to thrive in a strange place, and you did it all while carrying grief that would have broken lesser people. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking loose something I had been holding tight inside my chest. You barely know me. How can you say such things? I know enough. He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. I know you think of others before yourself. I know you have a fierce intelligence and a fierce heart to match your name. I know that every time I come here, I find myself looking for excuses to stay longer. The air between us had changed, charged with something I did not have words for. My skin felt too tight, my breath coming faster than it should. This was dangerous territory, more dangerous than the raiders, more dangerous than my clan's judgment. Finn. His name felt strange on my tongue, intimate in a way that made my heart race. We cannot, I know. He pulled his hand back, breaking whatever spell had formed. I know all the reasons why this is impossible. You are an orc, I am human. Your people hate mine, mine fear yours. Any relationship between us would be seen as betrayal by both sides. He stood, pacing to the window. I know all of this, and yet I cannot stop thinking about you. I should have told him to leave. Should have reinforced the boundaries that kept our peoples separate, maintained the careful distance between helper and helped. Instead, I found myself standing, crossing the small space until I was beside him at the window. When you look at me, I said quietly, what do you see? He turned, and I saw my answer in his eyes before he spoke. I see a woman who has endured more pain than anyone should have to bear. I see strength and intelligence and a kind of beauty that has nothing to do with what species you were born to. His hand rose slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of dark hair from my face. I see someone I could very easily fall in love with if I have not already. My tusks, small though they were, made kissing complicated. But Finn proved himself an adaptable man, tilting his head to find the angle that worked, his lips soft and sure against mine. The kiss was gentle, questioning, and when I leaned into it, he made a small sound of satisfaction that sent heat pooling in my belly. We broke apart slowly, neither of us willing to step back entirely. His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm on my skin. "This is madness," I whispered. "Yes." He smiled, and it transformed his usually serious face into something younger, lighter. "Complete madness. They will kill us if they find out. Probably. We are from different worlds, different species." "True." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. "Does any of that change how you feel?" It did not. That was the terrifying part. None of the very real, very dangerous obstacles between us seemed to matter when weighed against the way my heart lifted whenever I heard his footsteps approaching the homestead. The way his smile had become the best part of my days. The way I had started counting the hours until his next visit. "No," I admitted, "it does not change anything." He stayed that night, and we talked until the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. He told me about his childhood in the settlement, about the moment he had decided to become a tattoo artist instead of following his father into farming, about the horrors he had witnessed in the war, and the slow, painful process of forging a new identity in its aftermath. I told him about my clan, about the rigid hierarchy and the constant pressure to prove oneself through strength and combat prowess. About my mother, who had secretly taught me to read despite the elders' disapproval. About my brother, who had loved to carve small animals from wood and had dreamed of being an artist instead of a warrior. "He would have liked you," I said, watching the embers glow in the fireplace. "He always said there had to be more to life than fighting. I wish I could have met him." Finn's arm was around my shoulders, and I had allowed myself to lean into his warmth. "I wish none of this had happened to you. If it had not happened, I would never have met you." The thought should have filled me with guilt. My family's death had led to this unexpected joy, but I could not bring myself to regret it. Perhaps some things happen for reasons we cannot understand, or perhaps we make our own meaning from the chaos. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Either way, I am grateful you are here." Winter came early that year, blanketing the forest in snow and forcing me to rely more heavily on the supplies Finn brought from the settlement. He came more frequently now, often staying overnight despite the risk of someone noticing his absences. We were careful he varied his routes to the homestead, never came at the same time twice in a row, made sure no one followed him from town. But we were also young and in love, and youth makes people reckless. It started with small things. The way he looked at me when he thought I was not paying attention, his eyes soft with an affection he no longer tried to hide. The casual touches that had become second nature, his hand at the small of my back as we walked through the forest, my fingers brushing his arm when I passed him something at dinner. The nights we spent curled together under blankets, talking and kissing and exploring this new thing between us with careful, wondering hands. "I want to give you something," Finn said one evening as snow fell soft and silent outside. We were sitting by the fire, my head resting on his shoulder. "A tattoo, a mark that shows you are under my protection." I pulled back to look at him. "Explain." He traced a pattern on his own chest just over his heart. "In my craft, certain symbols carry weight. A tattoo placed here in this specific design marks the wearer as under the artist's personal protection. It is an old tradition, rarely used anymore, but it still holds legal standing in the settlement." "Legal standing how?" "It means that anyone who harms you answers to me directly. It creates a bond of responsibility. What happens to you reflects on my honor. Most people would not dare violate such a mark." He met my eyes steadily. "It would not make you immune to prejudice or guarantee your safety completely. But it would offer you some measure of protection beyond my word alone." The implications were staggering. He was not just offering me a symbol, he was offering to bind his reputation, his honor, possibly his future to mine in a way that everyone in the settlement would recognize. "If you do this," I said slowly, "there will be no hiding what I am to you. People will know you care for me beyond simple charity. Let them know." There was that steel again, that core of absolute certainty. "I am not ashamed of what I feel for you, Grukhara. And I am tired of pretending otherwise. Your people will reject you. Some will. Others may surprise us." He took my hand, pressing it flat against his chest where I could feel the steady beat of his heart. "I am not asking you to make this decision lightly. Think about it. Consider all the risks. But know that if you accept, I will defend that mark and you with everything I have." I thought about it for 3 days. 3 days of weighing my desire for protection against the danger I would be bringing into Finn's life. 3 days of imagining the looks on people's faces when they saw an orc woman bearing a human artist's mark of protection. 3 days of wondering if love was worth the cost we would both have to pay. On the 4th day, when Finn arrived with fresh supplies and hope written plainly on his face, I gave him my answer. "I accept." The process took hours. Finn prepared his tools with meticulous care, cleaning and sterilizing each needle, mixing inks to achieve the exact shades he wanted. He had brought sketches of the design, a complex pattern that incorporated symbols from both our cultures, woven together into something entirely new. "This will hurt," he warned as he prepared the first needle. "And not just from the tattooing. The placement over the heart means the pain will be sharper." "I am not afraid of pain." I settled into the chair he had brought from the shop specifically for this purpose, stripped down to my bindings and met his eyes. "I trust you." The first press of the needle was indeed painful, a sharp, burning sensation that radiated out from the point of contact. But Finn's hands were steady, his focus absolute, and there was something almost meditative about the repetitive motion, the slow building of art on my skin. He worked in silence for the most part, occasionally pausing to wipe away excess ink or check the design against his sketches. Hours passed. The pain became a constant hum, something I could breathe through, almost welcome in its intensity. This was real. This was permanent. This mark would declare to the world that I belonged to someone, that I was valued and protected and loved. "Almost done," Finn murmured. His face was close to mine, his breath warm against my skin as he added the final details. "Just a few more minutes." When he finally set down the needle and sat back, his expression was one of awed satisfaction. "Look." He held up a mirror, angling it so I could see the tattoo on my chest. The design was breathtaking, intricate spirals that I recognized from orcish tradition, intertwined with the geometric precision of human artistry. At the center was a symbol that combined both our people's representations of protection and devotion, rendered in blacks and deep greens that complemented my skin tone perfectly. "It is beautiful," I breathed. "Finn, this is I have no words. You do not need words." He cleaned the tattoo gently, his touch reverent. "This mark means you are under my protection. Anyone in the settlement will recognize it as my work, my pledge, and if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly." I reached up to cup his face, drawing him down for a kiss that tasted of salt and ink and promise. "I love you," I said, the words finally breaking free after weeks of dancing around them. "I love you, and I do not care who knows it." His smile was brilliant, unguarded in a way I had never seen before. "I love you too, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." We made love that night for the first time, slow and careful and achingly tender. Finn treated my body like one of his artworks, learning every line and curve with dedicated attention. I explored him with equal wonder, mapping the tattoos that covered his arms and shoulders, tasting his skin until I could identify him by scent alone. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the narrow bed, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. Finn traced the new tattoo on my chest with gentle fingers, his touch raising pleasant shivers. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Not a single one." I caught his hand, pressing it flat against the mark. "Though I suspect tomorrow will bring plenty of challenges." He was taking me to the settlement. That had been part of the plan from the beginning. The tattoo would serve its purpose only if people saw it, recognized it, understood what it meant. Hiding in the homestead would defeat the entire point. Morning came too quickly. I dressed in the best clothes. I had a simple tunic and trousers Finn had brought me weeks ago, along with a cloak that would keep out the worst of the winter cold. The tattoo was visible at the neckline, impossible to miss. "Ready?" Finn asked, offering his hand. I took it, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Ready." The walk to the settlement felt longer than usual, each step bringing us closer to the moment of revelation. I tried to prepare myself for the reactions we would face: the shock, the anger, the fear and prejudice that had defined relations between our peoples for generations. What I was not prepared for was the silence. We entered through the main road, walking hand in hand down the center of the settlement like we had every right to be there together. People stopped what they were doing to stare. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman dropped her basket, vegetables rolling across the frozen ground. But no one spoke. No one shouted or threw stones or called for the guards. They simply stared, their eyes moving from my face to the tattoo on my chest to Finn's determined expression and back again. "Good morning, Martha," Finn called out to the baker as we passed her shop. "Lovely day, is it not?" Martha's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before she managed a weak, "Good morning, Finn." We continued on to the tattoo parlor, and with each step I felt some of the tension ease from my shoulders. They were shocked, yes, confused and probably unsettled, but no one had attacked us. No one had even tried to stop us. Inside the shop, Finn finally let out a long breath and squeezed my hand. That went better than expected. They were too surprised to react. I moved to the window, looking out at the street where people were beginning to gather in small clusters, no doubt discussing what they had just witnessed. Give them time. The reaction will come. It came in the form of the settlement's magistrate, a stern woman named Helena who arrived at the shop just after noon with 2 guards flanking her. "Finn Ingram," she said, her voice clipped with barely controlled anger. "What is the meaning of this?" "The meaning of what, magistrate?" Finn did not look up from the design he was sketching, his tone carefully neutral. "You know exactly what I am referring to. You have brought an orc into our settlement. You have claimed her under your protection, which creates a legal complication that affects the entire community." Helena's eyes moved to me, and I saw disgust flicker across her face before she controlled it. "We have laws about harboring non-humans within settlement boundaries. I am aware of the laws." Finn set down his pencil and finally met her gaze. "I am also aware that those laws allow for exceptions in cases where the non-human in question poses no threat and has legitimate reason to seek shelter. Grukhara fled from raiders who murdered her family. She has been living peacefully on my property for months without causing any trouble. The mark I gave her is a legal declaration of protection, which you cannot simply ignore. The law was written to address individual cases of distress, not to facilitate." Helena struggled for words, her face reddening. "Whatever this relationship is." "This relationship," I said, speaking for the first time, "is none of your business, magistrate. Unless you can provide evidence that I have broken your laws or threatened your people, you have no grounds to demand my removal." She turned the full force of her glare on me. "You are an orc. Your very presence here is a threat. Then you are saying the law does not actually matter, that regardless of the protections it supposedly offers, you will ignore it when it suits your prejudices. I kept my voice level, reasonable. Is that the position you wish to take publicly? The magistrate's jaw worked, and I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. To force me out would require her to admit that the settlement's laws were not actually applied fairly. It would undermine her authority and the entire legal structure she was supposed to uphold. She stays under strict conditions, Helena said finally. Any sign of trouble, any complaint from the citizens, and she is gone. Is that understood? Perfectly. Finn's expression remained neutral, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. The magistrate left with her guards, and the small crowd that had gathered outside the shop slowly dispersed. Finn pulled me into his arms, pressing his face against my hair. "That was terrifying," he muttered. "You handled it perfectly." I pulled back to look at him. Though I suspect this is only the beginning. I was right. Over the following weeks, we faced a constant stream of small challenges and deliberate slights. Shop owners who refused to serve me, people who crossed the street to avoid walking near us, children who threw snowballs and ran away laughing when I turned to look. But there were also surprises. The baker, Martha, who left fresh bread on the doorstep of the tattoo parlor every morning with a note that said simply, "Everyone deserves to eat." A young couple who came to Finn for matching tattoos and struck up a conversation with me while they waited, treating me like any other person instead of a monster. An elderly man who had fought in the border wars and told Finn privately that he admired our courage in defying the old hatreds. Slowly, painfully, we began to carve out a space for ourselves in the settlement. Finn's business actually improved. Apparently the scandal had made him more interesting, and people who had never considered getting tattoos before came by out of curiosity. Some left immediately upon seeing me. Others stayed, got their work done, and gradually began to accept my presence as normal. I started taking on small jobs around the settlement, using my strength to help with tasks that required heavy lifting or endurance. At first, people were reluctant to hire an orc, but when I proved myself reliable and hardworking, word spread. By the time spring arrived, I had a steady stream of work and enough coin to contribute to our household expenses. Our household, Finn mused one evening as we lay in bed in the small apartment above his shop. We had moved there from the homestead once it became clear I would be staying in the settlement permanently. I like the sound of that. Do you? I traced the tattoo on his shoulder, a complex design of interlocking rings. Even though it means dealing with constant judgment and suspicion, especially because of that. He caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. "We are building something new here, Grukhara. A life that belongs to both our peoples and neither. It is hard work, yes, but it is also important work. You sound like one of the books you are always reading. I will take that as a compliment." He rolled over, pinning me beneath him with a grin that made my heart race. "Now stop talking and kiss me." I was happy to comply. Summer brought new challenges in the form of a delegation from my old clan. They arrived without warning, 3 warriors I recognized from my childhood, and demanded an audience with me in the settlement square. Finn wanted to come with me, but I convinced him to watch from a distance. This was something I needed to face alone. The leader of the delegation was a woman named Thara, who had been one of my mother's rivals in the clan hierarchy. She looked me up and down with undisguised contempt, her eyes lingering on the tattoo visible at my neckline. "So the rumors are true," she said. "You have taken a human as a mate. What I have done is none of the clan's concern. I am dead to you, remember." That is what you told the scouts when they asked about survivors from my family's homestead. Thara's expression flickered with something that might have been shame, but she recovered quickly. We came to offer you a chance to return. The clan is willing to overlook your indiscretions, given the circumstances of your family's death. Overlook them, I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. How generous, and what would be the cost of this forgiveness? You would renounce your association with the human, return to the clan. Take a proper mate from among our warriors. She said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. You are still young. You could still make a life for yourself among your own kind. I thought about the life she was offering. The rigid hierarchies, the constant battles to prove my worth, the endless cycle of raiding and warfare. Then I thought about the life I had built here. The small apartment filled with Finn's books and my carvings. The feeling of accomplishment when I completed a hard day's work. The way Finn looked at me like I was the most precious thing in his world. No, I said simply. No. Thara's tusks were larger than mine, more prominent, and they jutted forward as her jaw clenched. You would choose a human over your own people. I would choose happiness over obligation. I would choose love over tradition. I would choose a life where I am valued for who I am, not just how well I fight. I stepped closer, meeting her eyes steadily. I would choose freedom over returning to a clan that declared me dead rather than acknowledge I survived. You are a traitor to your blood. Perhaps, or perhaps I am simply brave enough to forge a new path. I gestured to the settlement around us. This place is not perfect. There is prejudice and fear and hatred. But there is also room for change, for growth, for something better than endless cycles of violence. I am going to help build that better thing. You can join me or you can leave, but you cannot make me go back to what I was. Thara stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant she realized I meant every word. Then you are no longer one of us. If we meet again, it will be as enemies. So be it. The delegation left, and I stood alone in the square until I felt Finn's arms wrap around me from behind. I leaned into his warmth, letting the tears I had been holding back finally fall. You were incredible, he murmured against my hair. So strong. I do not feel strong. I feel like I just severed the last connection to my old life. Then we will build you a new life, together. He turned me in his arms, cupping my face in his hands. You are not alone, Grukhara. You will never be alone again. The rest of summer passed in a blur of work and quiet domestic joy. We developed routines, Finn working in the shop during the day while I took whatever jobs were available. Both of us coming together in the evenings to cook dinner and share stories about our days. We explored the forest around the settlement, finding quiet places where we could be alone without judgment. We made love under the stars and talked about the future we were building together. Autumn arrived with a chill in the air and a messenger from the magistrate's office. Helena wanted to see both of us immediately. What do you think this is about? I asked as we walked to the government building. Nothing good, knowing Helena. Finn's jaw was tight with tension, but we will face it together, whatever it is. The magistrate's office was austere and official, all dark wood and formal documents. Helena sat behind a massive desk, her expression unreadable. Please sit. She gestured to the chairs across from her. I have something to discuss with you both. We sat, and I felt Finn's hand find mine under the edge of the desk. I have been reviewing the settlement's records, Helena began, and I have noticed something interesting. In the 6 months since Grukhara arrived, our crime rate has dropped by nearly 40%. Disputes requiring official intervention are down, and perhaps most significantly, we have had no raids or attacks from orc clans. What is your point? Finn asked warily. My point is that your Arrangement seems to be having a positive effect on the settlement. People are thinking differently about orcs. Some are even beginning to question the old hatreds that have defined our relations for so long. She folded her hands on the desk. I still have reservations about the precedent this sets, but I cannot deny the results. I exchanged a glance with Finn, not sure where this was going. I am proposing an experiment, Helena continued. I want to offer formal citizenship to Grukhara, not as a refugee under protection, but as a full member of this settlement with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The words hit me like a physical blow. Citizenship. Legal recognition not just as a person under protection, but as an equal member of the community. Why? I managed to ask. Because I have realized that clinging to old prejudices serves no one. Because you have proven yourself to be an asset to this settlement. And because, she paused, and for the first time I saw something almost like respect in her eyes. You and Finn have shown more courage than anyone else I know. You deserve to be recognized for that. Finn's hand tightened on mine. There will be people who oppose this. Let them oppose it. I am the magistrate, and this is within my authority to grant. Helena pulled out an official-looking document. All I need is Grukhara's agreement and both your signatures. I looked at the document, at the words that would transform me from an outsider to a citizen, and felt tears prickling at my eyes. Yes, yes, I agree. We signed the papers, and just like that, my status in the settlement changed fundamentally. I was no longer an orc living among humans. I was simply a person, with all the messy complexity that entailed. News of my citizenship spread quickly, and reactions were mixed. Some people celebrated it as a sign of progress. Others grumbled that standards were being lowered and traditions abandoned. But the document was official and legal, and even those who opposed it could not deny its validity. With citizenship came new opportunities. I started working with Finn more directly, helping him with the physical aspects of running the shop and learning the basics of his craft. I had no talent for the intricate designs he created, but I proved adept at managing supplies and dealing with customers. One particularly difficult customer, a large man who had been drinking and thought it would be amusing to harass the pet orc, learned quickly that I was not to be trifled with. When he grabbed my arm roughly, I used his own momentum to flip him onto his back and pin him to the floor, my knee on his chest and my knife at his throat. "Touch me again without permission," I said quietly, "and you will lose the hand." Finn had appeared in the doorway at the commotion, needle still in hand, and I saw him fighting to suppress a smile. "I suggest you apologize to my partner and leave, sir." The man left hurriedly, and the story spread through the settlement within hours. After that, people treated me with considerably more respect. "Your partner?" I asked Finn later that evening, unable to hide my pleased smile. "Is that what I am now?" "Well, you work in the shop, you share my bed, you are legally recognized as a citizen of this settlement." I think partner is accurate. He pulled me close, his hand settling at my waist. "Unless you would prefer a different title, such as wife." The world seemed to stop. I pulled back to look at him, searching his face for any sign that he was joking. All I found was absolute sincerity and a vulnerability that made my heart ache. "Finn, I know it is complicated. I know there are no legal provisions for marriage between humans and orcs, but we could create our own ceremony, our own vows. Something that binds us together in the eyes of our community, if not the law." He took both my hands in his. "I love you, Grukhara. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" There was only one possible answer. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." We planned the ceremony for the first day of winter, wanting to start the new season as formally committed partners. Finn designed a special tattoo for the occasion, matching bands that would encircle our ring fingers, a permanent symbol of our union. The ceremony itself was small and unconventional. We held it in the clearing where the homestead stood, with Martha the baker and the elderly war veteran serving as witnesses. There was no priest, no religious official would agree to officiate a marriage between species, so we wrote our own vows and spoke them under the bare trees as snow began to fall. "I vow to protect you," Finn said, his voice steady despite the cold. "To stand beside you against prejudice and hatred. To build a life with you that honors both our peoples and transcends the divisions between them. I vow to love you until my last breath and beyond." My voice shook as I spoke my own vows. "I vow to cherish you, to support your dreams as you have supported mine. To face whatever challenges come with courage and honesty. I vow to be your partner in all things, to build with you a future that our ancestors could never have imagined. I vow to love you with my whole heart, for as long as I live." Finn tattooed the bands on our fingers right there in the clearing, working quickly despite the falling snow. The pain was sharp and sweet, and when he finished with my hand and I took over to mark his, I felt the full weight of what we were creating. A bond that was written in ink and skin, visible to anyone who looked, undeniable and permanent. "You are bound to me now," I said as I completed the final line on his tattoo. "This mark means you are under my protection, just as I am under yours." His smile was radiant. I can think of no better fate. We sealed our vows with a kiss as our witnesses cheered, and when we finally pulled apart, I saw that a small crowd had gathered at the edge of the clearing. Word had spread through the settlement about the ceremony, and people had come, some out of curiosity, some out of genuine support, some perhaps just to witness history being made. Helena the magistrate was there, along with several members of the settlement council. Martha had brought her entire family. Even some of the people who had initially opposed my presence had shown up, their expressions thoughtful if not entirely approving. "Speech," someone called out, and others took up the cry. Finn looked at me and I nodded. He turned to face the crowd, his hand finding mine and holding tight. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I know this is unusual. I know it challenges everything we have been taught about the divisions between our peoples. But Grukhara and I believe that love is stronger than hatred, that understanding can overcome prejudice, and that the future does not have to be bound by the mistakes of the past." He paused, and I saw several people nodding along with his words. "We are not asking anyone to abandon their beliefs or traditions. We are simply asking for the space to build our own life, our own traditions, based on mutual respect and love. And we hope that, in doing so, we might show others that a different kind of future is possible." I stepped forward, adding my own words. "I came here fleeing violence and death. I found safety, yes, but I also found something I never expected: acceptance, friendship, and love. This settlement has given me a new life. I pledge to repay that gift by contributing to this community, by working to build bridges between our peoples, and by proving through my actions that orcs and humans can coexist in peace." The crowd was silent for a long moment, and I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. Then Martha started clapping, and others joined in, until the clearing rang with applause. It was not universal acceptance. Some people still left with disapproval written on their faces. But it was a start, a crack in the wall of prejudice that had stood for generations. That night, back in our apartment above the shop, Finn and I made love as husband and wife, the matching tattoos on our fingers catching the firelight as we moved together. Afterward, we lay tangled in blankets in each other's arms, talking quietly about the future. "Do you think we will have children?" I asked, tracing patterns on his chest. I do not know if that is even possible, given that we are different species. He caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. But I would like to try if you would. I would like that too. I smiled against his shoulder. Though I suspect any children of ours will face their own challenges. They will. But they will also have us to guide them, to teach them that they can be proud of both their heritages. He shifted to look at me. We are creating something new here, Grukhara. A family that transcends the old boundaries. It will not be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. Winter deepened, and with it came the true test of our union. A sickness swept through the settlement, affecting young children most severely. The settlement's healer was overwhelmed, struggling to keep up with the demand for treatment. I remembered something my mother had taught me, a traditional orcish remedy for fever and respiratory illness, made from bark and roots that grew in the deep forest. I gathered the ingredients and prepared the medicine, then brought it to the healer's house. She looked at me with exhaustion-dulled eyes. "What is this?" "A remedy. It might help the children." I offered her the pot of prepared medicine. I do not know if it will work for humans, but among my people it was very effective. The healer hesitated, weighing desperation against distrust. Finally, she took the pot. "I will try it with one patient first. If it helps, I will use it more widely." The remedy worked. Within hours of administering it, the first child's fever broke. The healer began giving it to the other sick children, and one by one they began to recover. Word spread quickly. The orc woman's medicine had saved the settlement's children. The shift in attitude was palpable. People who had avoided eye contact before now greeted me on the street. Mothers who had clutched their children close when I passed now smiled and thanked me. I had proven myself not just harmless, but actively helpful, and that changed everything. "You are a hero," Finn said that night, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "Do you realize that? You saved those children." I simply used knowledge my mother taught me. Any orc healer would have done the same. But you are the one who did it. You are the one who chose to help despite having every reason to resent these people for how they treated you. He pulled back to look at me, his eyes shining with pride. "You are extraordinary, Grukhara." I kissed him to hide the tears threatening to spill over. "We are extraordinary together." Spring came again, bringing with it a visitor I had never expected to see, an orc emissary from a neighboring clan, requesting a meeting with both me and the settlement's magistrate. The meeting was held in Helena's office, with Finn at my side and several council members present as witnesses. The emissary was an older orc named Grath, scarred and battle-worn, who looked at me with something approaching respect. "We have heard stories," he said without preamble. "Stories of an orc woman who lives among humans, who took a human mate, who was granted citizenship and saved human children from sickness." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "My clan wishes to know if these stories are true." "They are true," I confirmed, "all of them. And the humans have accepted this," Helena spoke up. "Not all of them, not easily. But yes, Grukhara is a recognized citizen of this settlement with all the rights and protections that entails." Grath sat back, looking thoughtful. "My clan has been at war with humans for 3 generations. We raid, they retaliate, we raid again. It is the way of things. But it is also exhausting, and it benefits no one." He turned his attention back to me. "Your story suggests another path might be possible, a path toward peace." I felt Finn's hand tighten on mine under the table. This was bigger than us, bigger than our personal happiness. This was the beginning of something that could change the entire region. "Peace is possible," I said carefully, "but it requires both sides to be willing to let go of old hatreds. It requires seeing each other as people, not just enemies. It requires courage and compromise and patience." Will you help us achieve this peace? Will you serve as an intermediary between your people and mine?" The request was enormous, the responsibility staggering. But as I looked around the table at Helena, at the council members, at Finn, whose belief in me had never wavered, I knew there was only one answer I could give. "I will help, on one condition." I met Grath's eyes steadily. "Any peace we build must acknowledge that orcs and humans can coexist as equals. No one species will have dominance over the other. We will be partners, not conquerors." "Agreed." Grath extended his hand and I shook it, feeling the full weight of what we had just committed to. The negotiations took months. Grath's clan sent representatives, the settlement sent council members, and Finn and I served as mediators, translating not just language but cultural expectations and concerns. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when it seemed like the whole effort would collapse. But slowly, painfully, we hammered out an agreement. The orcs would stop raiding human settlements. The humans would allow orcs to trade freely in their markets and would cease their retaliatory strikes into orc territory. A neutral zone would be established where both peoples could meet and exchange goods and ideas without fear. The treaty was signed on a warm summer day in the settlement square, with representatives from both sides putting their marks on the document. I stood with Finn, watching history being made, and felt tears of joy streaming down my face. "We did this," Finn whispered, his arm around my waist. "We actually did this. We started it," I corrected. "But it will take generations to truly build peace. We have only taken the first step. Then let us take the next step together." He turned to face me, and I saw something nervous and excited in his expression. "I want to expand the shop. Create a place where both human and orc artists can work side by side, sharing techniques and creating new forms of art." The idea was brilliant, ambitious, exactly the kind of bridge building that would reinforce the fragile peace. "I love it. When do we start?" "As soon as possible." He grinned. "I was hoping you would say yes. I have already been looking at properties." We found a larger building on the edge of the settlement, with enough space for multiple workstations and a gallery to display finished pieces. Finn recruited 2 human artists he had trained over the years, and I reached out to orc tattooists I had known before fleeing my clan. 3 orcs agreed to join us, 2 young artists eager to learn new techniques, and an older master who was intrigued by the possibility of collaboration. The day they arrived, walking openly through the settlement without fear or hostility, I felt another barrier crumble. The shop became a gathering place, a symbol of what cooperation between our peoples could achieve. Humans came to get traditional orc designs, wanting to carry symbols of the peace on their own skin. Orcs came to learn human geometric techniques, appreciating the precision and mathematical beauty of the work. And gradually, organically, a new art form emerged, pieces that blended both traditions into something entirely unique. I learned tattooing properly under the guidance of the orc master, my hands finally steady enough for the delicate work. My first piece was on Finn, an addition to the tattoo on his chest, incorporating elements of my orcish heritage into the design he had created. When I finished, he looked at it in the mirror and wept. "It is perfect," he said. "You are perfect." "Hardly." I cleaned the fresh tattoo carefully. "But I am yours, and you are mine, and that is all that matters." 2 years after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. It should not have been possible. Orcs and humans were different species, after all, but life has a way of defying expectations. The settlement's healer confirmed it with a mixture of astonishment and excitement. "This is extraordinary," she said, her hand on my still flat stomach. "I have never heard of a successful cross-species pregnancy. We will need to monitor you very carefully." The pregnancy was difficult. My body struggled to adapt to carrying a child that was not entirely orc, and there were complications that kept me bedridden for the last 2 months. Finn barely left my side, his worry written in every line of his face. "You need to rest," I told him one night as he dozed in the chair beside our bed. "The shop needs you. The shop can wait. You are more important." He took my hand, pressing it against his cheek. "I cannot lose you, Grukhara. You are my whole world. You will not lose me. I am too stubborn to die now, when we have so much to live for." Our daughter was born on a cold winter morning, entering the world with a loud, indignant cry that made both the healer and me laugh through our tears. She was perfect, smaller than a full orc baby but larger than a human one, with skin that was a lighter green than mine and tiny tusks that would grow more prominent as she aged. Finn held her with shaking hands, his face a mask of wonder. "She is beautiful. She is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "What should we name her?" I asked, exhausted but happier than I had ever been. We had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, never quite settling on one that felt right. But looking at our daughter, seeing the way she represented both our peoples and something entirely new, the answer came to me. "Unity," I said. "Her name is Unity." Finn smiled, tears tracking down his face. "Unity, it is perfect." Our daughter grew strong and healthy, a living symbol of what was possible when love overcame prejudice. She had her father's dark eyes and my pointed ears, his steady temperament and my fierce determination. The settlement embraced her completely. She was theirs in a way that transcended species, a child who belonged to all of them. Raising Unity came with unique challenges. We had to navigate questions about her identity, teaching her to be proud of both her heritages while preparing her for the reality that some would always see her as other. We had to create new traditions that honored both cultures, blending orcish and human customs into something uniquely ours. But we also had incredible support. The community rallied around us, offering advice and assistance. Martha baked special treats for Unity, teaching her recipes that had been in her family for generations. The orc master at our shop carved toys for her, intricate figures that told stories of orcish history. Helena became an unofficial grandmother, spoiling Unity shamelessly whenever she visited. When Unity was 5 years old, more families like ours began to appear. A human woman and an orc man who had fallen in love while trading at the neutral zone. An orc woman who had been injured and was nursed back to health by a human farmer, who then refused to let her leave. Each couple faced their own struggles, but they also had us as an example, proof that such relationships could work. We became accidental leaders of a movement we had never intended to start. People came to us for advice on navigating the complexities of cross-species relationships. Young people who felt drawn to someone from the other side asked us how to talk to their families. We did our best to help, sharing both our successes and our failures, always emphasizing that love required work but was worth the effort. The peace treaty held, evolving and strengthening as the years passed. Trade flourished between settlements. Children grew up seeing orcs and humans working side by side instead of fighting. The old hatreds did not disappear. There were still those who clung to prejudice and fear, but they became less common, less acceptable. On our 10th wedding anniversary, Finn and I returned to the clearing where we had spoken our vows. The homestead still stood, maintained now as a reminder of where our journey together had begun. We held hands and walked through the forest, remembering that desperate night when I had stumbled into his shop seeking shelter. "You ever regret it?" I asked. Choosing this life, this constant struggle against prejudice and doubt. Finn stopped walking and turned to face me, his hands coming up to cup my face. Never. Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Grukhara. Our life together, our daughter, the peace we have helped build it is all more than I ever dreamed possible. I love you, I said, the words still carrying the same weight they had when I first spoke them years ago. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you. He kissed me softly, tenderly, with all the devotion of a decade spent building a life together. My fierce-hearted warrior, my partner, my wife. We stood there in the clearing as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and I thought about how far we had come. From that first desperate encounter to this moment of quiet joy, we had defied expectations, overcome obstacles, and created something beautiful. Unity was waiting for us when we returned home, eager to show us a drawing she had made, a picture of our family, orc and human standing together, surrounded by friends from both peoples. She had captured something essential in that simple drawing, the vision of a future where such families were not remarkable but normal, where love transcended the boundaries of species and culture. "This is wonderful," Finn told her, hanging the drawing in a place of honor on the wall. "You are a talented artist. Like you and Mother," Unity said proudly. "When I grow up, I want to work in the shop too." I caught Finn's eye over our daughter's head and we shared a smile. The shop had expanded twice more, now employing a dozen artists from both species and attracting customers from across the region. It had become exactly what Finn had envisioned, a place where art and culture merged, where collaboration created beauty that neither species could achieve alone. "You can start learning now if you want," I told Unity. "We will teach you everything we know." She beamed at us, and in that moment, I saw our future stretching ahead, Unity growing up to take over the shop, perhaps starting her own family with someone who saw her for who she was rather than what she was. More children like her being born, growing up in a world where the divisions between species mattered less with each passing generation. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and struggles, moments when the old hatreds flared up and threatened everything we had built. But we would face them together, just as we had faced every challenge so far. That night, after Unity had gone to bed, Finn and I sat together on the small balcony outside our bedroom, watching the stars wheel overhead. The tattoo on my chest, the mark that had declared me under his protection all those years ago, had faded slightly with time, but it was still visible, still meaningful. I traced it absently, thinking about how a single mark had changed everything. "Do you remember what you said when you gave me this tattoo?" I asked. Finn nodded, his arm tightening around my shoulders. "This mark means you are under my protection." I remember every word of that conversation. It was the moment I admitted to myself how much I loved you. It was the moment I knew I could trust you completely. I leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. "You kept your promise. You protected me, defended me, stood beside me through everything. And you have done the same for me. We protect each other." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "That is what partnership means, what love means." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the settlement below us slowly darken as people extinguished their lights and settled in for the night. I thought about all those people, human and orc, families like ours and individuals still navigating their own journeys toward understanding. We had helped create this peace, this tentative but growing harmony, and it filled me with a satisfaction deeper than anything I had known in my old life. "I am grateful," I said quietly, "for all of it, the pain and the struggle and the joy, for you, for Unity, for this life we have built. I would not change a single moment." Finn turned to me, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Neither would I. You are my greatest adventure, Grukhara. My greatest love, my greatest joy." We kissed under the stars, just as we had on our wedding night, and I felt the truth of those words settle deep in my bones. This was what happiness looked like, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of love strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Not perfection, but two imperfect people choosing each other every day, building something meaningful through patience and dedication and faith. The mark on my chest that had once declared me under Finn's protection had evolved into something more. It was a symbol of our partnership, our equality, our commitment to standing together against whatever came. And in a way, we were all under each other's protection now, human and orc, bound together by the fragile but growing peace we had helped create. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Unity grew into a remarkable young woman, inheriting the best qualities of both her parents and forging her own path. She became a master tattoo artist, developing techniques that blended human precision with orcish boldness in ways that took my breath away. Other mixed families appeared, each adding their own threads to the tapestry of peace we were weaving. The settlement grew and prospered, becoming known throughout the region as a place where species barriers meant nothing, where talent and character mattered more than the color of one's skin or the presence of tusks. Finn and I grew old together, our hands weathered by years of work but still finding each other in the dark, still intertwining when we walked through the settlement we had helped transform. The tattoos on our bodies faded and blurred slightly with age, but the meaning behind them only grew stronger. On the 50th anniversary of the peace treaty, we were invited to speak at a celebration in the neutral zone. Hundreds of people gathered, human and orc, old and young, couples like us and individuals who had found their own ways to bridge the divide. Unity stood beside us, her own family at her side, and I felt the weight of history pressing down on my shoulders. 50 years ago, I began, my voice carrying across the crowd. I fled to a human settlement seeking nothing more than survival. I found that, yes, but I also found something I never expected: love, acceptance, and a chance to build a life beyond the old conflicts that had defined both our peoples. Finn continued, his hand finding mine as it always did. We did not set out to change the world. We simply chose to love each other despite every reason not to. And in doing so, we discovered that the barriers between us were never as insurmountable as we had been taught to believe. Unity spoke last, her voice strong and clear. I am the daughter of two peoples and fully a member of both. I have never known a world where orcs and humans could not live in peace, could not love each other, could not build families together. That is the gift my parents gave me, and the gift we all must work to preserve and strengthen for future generations. The crowd erupted in cheers, and I felt tears streaming down my face as I looked out at all those people who had chosen hope over hatred, love over fear, possibility over the constraints of tradition. We had done this. Finn and I and all the others who had dared to imagine a different kind of world. That night, back in our home above the shop, Finn and I lay in bed together as we had for 5 decades. His hair was white now, his hands marked with the arthritis that comes from years of detailed work. My own body bore the marks of age as well. But when I looked at him, I still saw the man who had offered me protection when I had nothing, who had loved me when it was dangerous to do so, who had built a life with me that exceeded my wildest dreams. No regrets. He asked the same question he had posed so many times over the years. Not a single one, I answered, the same response I always gave. You are my home, Finn Ingram, you always have been. And you are mine, Grukhara Ingram. He pulled me close and I settled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. My fierce-hearted warrior. My love. We fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the life we had built and the legacy we would leave behind. The tattoo on my chest, that mark of protection that had started everything, rose and fell with my breathing, a permanent reminder of the moment when everything changed. The mark meant I was under his protection, yes, but it also meant so much more than that. It meant I was loved. It meant I belonged. It meant I had found my place in the world, not despite the differences between us, but because of the way those differences had created something entirely new. And as I drifted off to sleep, safe and warm and loved, I thought about all the young people out there who were just beginning their own journeys across the divides of species and culture. I hoped they would find the same courage Finn and I had found. I hoped they would choose love over fear, hope over hatred, possibility over the limiting stories of the past. Because that was the true gift of the mark, not just protection, but permission. Permission to love freely, to build boldly, to imagine a world where the old boundaries no longer held. Permission to be exactly who we were and to find joy in that authenticity. The settlement outside our window was quiet now. Everyone settled in for the night. But I could feel the life pulsing through it, families like ours, individuals finding their own paths, children growing up in a world their grandparents could never have imagined. All of it was connected, all of it was meaningful, all of it mattered. And it had all started with a desperate woman seeking shelter and a man willing to offer protection. From that single act of kindness had grown a revolution of the heart, a transformation of society, a vision of the future that gave me hope even as my own future grew shorter. I pressed my hand to the tattoo on my chest one more time, feeling the raised lines of ink beneath my palm. "This mark means you are under my protection," Finn had said all those years ago. And he had kept that promise every day since, in ways large and small, through words and actions and the simple act of choosing me again and again. But the beautiful truth was that I had protected him too. We had protected each other, had built a fortress of love that withstood every siege. And now that fortress had expanded to include our daughter, our friends, our community, all of us sheltering together under the simple but profound belief that love transcended every boundary we could imagine. As sleep finally claimed me, I smiled against Finn's chest. We had done good work, the two of us. We had built something that would outlast our individual lives, something that would continue growing and evolving long after we were gone. We had proven that change was possible, that love could overcome hatred, that the future did not have to be bound by the mistakes of the past. The mark on my chest was a symbol of all of that. And tomorrow, when I woke in Finn's arms as I had for 50 years, it would still be there, a permanent reminder that I was protected, I was loved, and I had found my home in the most unexpected of places. This was our story. This was our legacy, and it was complete.